Oh, we early. That's what we talking about. Abe ain't playing no games. We out here. This is what I'm talking about. I caught me way off guard. I was like, I was down to no, not even. We here. We are live. It is episode 54 of the Lyrical Ones podcast on on this great Thursday, not your usual Wednesday. As per usual, family means a lot. And with that being said, Affluent, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a lovely day. I got tons of family, right? Like not too many, but we got a lot on either side of my parental units. Come from large families who came to California from the South uh, after with plenty ingenuity and survival tactics. Survived the Jim Crow South and survived sharecropping and survived slavery and um, survived. You know until at least the new this new federal holiday is coming through. Before we get into that, how you doing on this different day, this Thursday?
Well, on this different day, Thursday, yeah, it's I'm good. I'm choosing to be good. I'm making the choice to um live within my greatness and exercise it as and takes it to its furthest capabilities and capacities. Um, saying all the things that you said right around family, like I have a lot of those same threads and strings where my family is large, but as the years pass on, so do a lot of my family, and trying to celebrate those milestones and those achievements and those rites of passage that have become a way of life or a part of the American society's kind of formulation of what we call a dream. Really trying to appreciate those moments, really enjoying giving myself to caution to the wind, you know, uh within that thread, right? Uh Recently it was E3, right? That's called the Entertainment Electronic Expo. For those that aren't aware, for the geeks out there who are very well versed in what that means, those three E's usually are the what's to come in the electronic digital world of entertainment. It's usually them showing off and showing out. And there was someone who there's a journalist by the name of Tamor, I forget his last name, but he had this reaction to a trailer that ended up becoming a meme. And people try to criticize him expressing his joy, and his point was, in the world that we live in, given all of the complexity and all of the struggle and strife that we go through, if you have anything that brings you unbridled joy and you want to share and express that, do not hesitate, because life is limited in a lot of ways. And if you can find anything to be appreciative of and have fun with, why not take it as far as you can, especially if you're not hurting anybody. And I it resonated with me because I find joy in so many little things, right? That may be insignificant to so many, but those things are what give me an extra boost, may give me a little bit of energy, and I'm leaning into those things because yeah, like there is a lot of complexity, and we're gonna get into a lot of different variety of subjects on this episode 54 of the Lyrical Ones podcast. Because yeah, we are observant and aware, and they have impact on us. And so with that, you mentioned prior to us going live with this, what is something that that you kind of touched on, what's happening currently when it comes to, we're in the month of June, and there's a particular day in June not everyone is familiar with.
Well, first is Pride Month in America and in the planet Earth for those celebrating and acknowledging and um, really just respecting and honoring our family who are queer, LGBTQIA plus. Feel me? We just want to continue to lift them up in their voices, as they, find ways to navigate this world where they marginalized, where they looked over, where they are discriminated against, where they're um, victimized at times, and a lot of things are heightened as far as violence goes when it comes to hate crimes, because people are different, um, and it's not the difference that's the problem. It's the way that people who are narrow-minded and cold-hearted, and a lot of times, experiencing self-hate, how they perceive difference um, to be an affront, and they choose to lash out and treat people with violence, cause harm to people, and that has been going on, since before you know immigrants came to America, um, to run from persecution and what they feel was unfair in England, and some of those folks were queer when they came across, and had to hide their true self, and in doing so they condoned and reinforced the status quo, uh, well, dangerous patriarchy, and that same thinking and complicitness, I think is part of what allowed slavery to happen in America the way it did, and for it to continue, the slavery of peoples of Africa, peoples of Africa and African descent, um, to be enslaved in America, and you know the interesting thing about June and June 19th in particular is that it took a small group of people to travel from the northern part of America to the southern part of America to deliver a message that the people who were still being enslaved in southern countries in America were supposed to be freed by American law, United States law. And you just can't even imagine how many people died, um, in the months, uh, and days and months leading up to this notice. Um, it's a really interesting time because for some people it was exciting and inspiring, and for some people uh, it meant loss of business. It meant a loss of stability. For some people, it ruined their fun and their way of living, and for a lot of people, it you know made them even more targets, even more of a target to bigots and racists and peoples who would have them stay enslaved. Um, and even after they knew they were free, they still had to live within the Jim Crow South. And some people may have moved away, but a lot of people on their way out were murdered and hung and castrated and raped and killed. Um, so yeah, uh, you know, transitions weren't very peaceful after June 19th, and they're still not peaceful. And we acknowledge that on this podcast, and in our realities that there's still a lack of peace and understanding and acceptance within the United States as a whole. There's a lot of colorism. There's like reason why I think people of color really get upset, especially black people get upset about cultural appropriation is the fact that there's a lack of um, allyship when it comes to the regular consumer consuming, uh, you know, entertainment, apparel, products, and things that came out of the genius and the beauty of African American lifestyle and culture. Um, and folks who are consumers are still willing to just watch as people are murdered and killed. And it's so much we can do to lift voices and bring awareness. Um, we watched a lot of Black Lives. We actually watched a lot of Black Lives Matter signs and murals and things go up around the country, um, instead of solutions um, being implemented to fix the problem of police brutality and violence against black people and people of color and people of African descent. Uh, and it's cool that maybe as a national holiday, Juneteenth will become a day. I don't know. It's just really weird that every holiday that has to do with black people is about like their distance or their proximity to slavery. Um, like we celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday, but we don't celebrate Malcolm X's birthday. You know, but like we celebrate, civil rights leaders, but particularly MLK, and we water down some of his words, and we acknowledge that Black History Month is a thing, but a lot of what is talked about in Black History Month is the proximity of to slavery. Uh, so Juneteenth comes about, and I think I was fine with it being not being a national holiday, uh, because then people can't lie about it. Um, and if now people go pretend to know what it is, and most of the time before you ask them what Juneteenth is, they say I don't know. Right? Is that June 16th? Right? Is it June 17th? Is it June 18th? Right? Is it June 14th? Is it June 15th? Right? Is it June 13th? Like people would people would know, and they would say I don't know, and you could not pretend to know if you didn't, and now people go take the day off and not work on Friday for some people, and that's gonna be cool for some, and they're gonna enjoy their time off and not work and like have no like it's funny because I haven't heard anything about a Juneteenth sale for from any large corporation just yet. I think they they deepen their budget of celebrating Pride Month, and advocating for dollars, not people but dollars, as they pull in their connections and they sponsorships and sponsor influencers and dancers and uh, non-binary folks, um, and queer people to be relevant as they again advocate for dollars as tolerant or equity. They don't really they they don't really talk about equity. They say equality, and just kind of miss the mark often, but they make their phone calls during the month of June and bring people out and parade them around and make videos and make clips and IGTV reels and IG reels and TikToks, and they got budgets for that, and I don't see much going on. They don't think they foresaw Juneteenth becoming a national holiday, so now they're not sure what to do with it. But we got a national holiday in June. I guess they saw June as like, oh well, we ain't got much going on in the month of June as far as holidays go. I guess we could put something there. We'll see if the stock market closes on that day. We'll look for that um, in the coming years. Uh, but since it's on a Saturday this year, we ain't got to worry about that. So no money is lost, and it's very interesting that it just happened so close to the date showing up. Um, but yeah, I think if it becomes part of curriculum in schools, you know, that starts maybe in the beginning of the month, and June becomes a non-violent month in a lot of spaces. I think I would be really excited and hopeful, behind those types of changes. But right now, um, there's a lot of kids growing up of all different ethnicities and backgrounds that don't know what Juneteenth is, and if they start to learn it, um, they might not even get taught it in school because it happens during the summer. And it's not too much summer going on. So it's just all very interesting how things go. Um, but folks who want to keep their money is smart. uh, so yeah, Juneteenth is gonna be a national holiday, and it's bittersweet for a lot of people. Um, and like you said earlier, us as a society acknowledging what happened 100 years ago in Tulsa, Oklahoma is is great. But if it had happened 30 years ago, a lot more people would have been alive to tell their stories on a national level. I mean, even 10 years ago, it would have been more people. And as much as we, were excited about Barack Obama being in the presidency, uh, it's a lot we could have learned, you know, in initiatives. But I hope we, are less bonded by trauma and more bonded by hope and love for each other. Welcome to episode 50 something on June
Episode 54
June
of the
17th.
Lyrical Ones, June 17th.
We're
You
two
brought
days
up a
out.
lot, which made me look up a lot. I was going, you made like, you provoked a lot of thought in what you were saying because this is kind of amalgamation of different threads happening at the same time. So, I flew and I want to praise you for your eloquence, elegance, and gracefulness and how you communicated that because I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that from my perspective. So watch me fall down the stairs in the dark as I descend into madness with this particular topic of Juneteenth. Because one, let's cover this word real quick. I looked this up as this was going on because there's a lot of different things that are going on in this
Go for it.
country, right? This third largest populace in the world, supposedly, based off of the data that I've been able to find thanks to Google. Um, theory, the definition, right? A supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained, right? A theory, a set of principles on which the practice of an activity is based. Theory, an idea used to account for a situation or justify a course of action. Now, if I look up fact, right, and I was to give you the definition of fact, a thing that is known or proved to be true, right? So when we look at the word theory, right, a supposition
Supposition, yeah.
Supposition, right? Or a system of ideas intended to explain something. That's a theory, right? Especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained, right? Now, if I look at fact, a thing that is known or proved to be true. And there was something that was said around in Florida around race theory and education on race theory and them being against it at a school board in Florida. They were against it in one of the counties, right? And it became a talking point in the news. All right. It was highlighting how this is a conversation that I see happen a lot. This frequency of conversation is happening more and more where people will say it's not about race, it's about class. If we change the argument from race to class, it's a better argument to make. And I understand what that means on a very practical binary sense, or as we would say, black and white. I get what they're trying to lead to. They're saying in order to have the numbers, the support, and the justification for the fight in all these different regards that exist within the black struggle, if you change it from it to being about race and change it to being about class, you're now opening it up, right? And MLK definitely was headed in that direction of trying to get things to be in that fashion, right? Because it was
Right.
what I'm pushing for will benefit black people and everyone else. It wasn't strictly just black people, but again, he was a black man at a time that was fighting for change for black people in a strategic sense, had to be very choice with his words and careful. And even then, it was enough to get him killed and assassinated. Right? That is the truth. He became a martyr for the struggle that currently exists at this point in time. Because as Alfluin was talking about Juneteenth and how that, yeah, it's going to be recognized as a federal holiday in the United States of America, the same country that has created this population of individuals who don't necessarily have a national country origin identity, right? We have skin color, and then we have America, and then we have the results of slavery as this multi-generational inheritance that no one asked for. Multi-generational inheritance that no one asked for. It's been multiple generations where we've inherited the traumatic discourse, energy, and actions, right? That the United States, I'm unsure, or maybe I'm so wrapped up in my own pain and rage, I can't see whether or not they hold themselves accountable to it. But it happened. Slavery happened, right? And the thing is, right, this is the thing. When we talk about Juneteenth, that was the day
Tell them
that
the thing.
the thing about Juneteenth, right? When we look at it, that was the national. Now it's considered the National Independence Day, historically known as Jubilee or Emancipation Day, the day that they freed the slaves. Now, this is the thing. You're talking about in the present time, there's so many black people, let alone people, who don't even understand or have an awareness of what Juneteenth is, right? And that's, to me, that is by choice due to a larger structure that rather us forget about it, or in this sense, give it as a means of pacification. We're gonna identify it, designate it, and give you a day. We're gonna give you a day, right? We gave you a month, the shortest month in the year, and now we're gonna give you a day. We're going to recognize the day that we as a country, we America, United States, us, United States, we decided we're going to end it. We're going to give you that day now to celebrate because we decided that was the day. We put you in slavery, and then when you fought long and hard and enough, we realized, okay, it's wrong. But hold on, wait a minute. How wrong is it? Well, we all know the U.S. Constitution. We all know the amendments, right? Or maybe we don't. But in section 1 of Amendment 13, the 13th Amendment, what does it say? It says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except, oh wait, I thought it was abolished. No. It's abolished except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Right? Right? So we were freed, but in this amendment, right? This 13th Amendment, right? Wait, this was January 31st, 1865, right? That's when it. But
That's when the
Juneteenth,
right. Go ahead.
Juneteenth, right? If we look at Juneteenth, that was June 19th, 1866. So what happened? We created a plan. We created a contingency plan for our Day of Independence. And what was that contingency plan? If we put you in a position where you're more likely to be arrested, incarcerated, imprisoned, then did we ever really free you? If we systematically, right? This isn't a theory, this is a fact. We could just look. It's a fact. I said it's a fact. I said it's a fact because I've experienced it from my own family. I've experienced it when it comes to the data and statistics, the scientific proof of which has been provided due to what they've captured, given the fact that, yes, this is an industrial complex, right? So you mean to tell me we were free, except unless we commit a crime, right? So how free are we? And now we got a holiday to celebrate what you told us is freedom, right? Because I really don't see my people free, right? I see free to a default because if what happened to George Floyd and countless others, and the reason why I use George Floyd is because that has to me been the pivotal point in our current generation in time to signal to the mass atrocities in terms of how horrible black people are treated and how death is just always around the corner because George Floyd isn't one person, it's many people who've also experienced the same fate. But because George Floyd was, in my eyes, uh, a very clear moment where you can't ignore it, you can't get away from it, you can't hide from it. It's in your face. This is the reality of what we're dealing with. George Floyd became the name, right? That sticks in everyone's head. So it draws on your memories. It draws on all the trauma that exists that you experienced as an individual. As you listen to this, when I say the words George Floyd, you have memories and you have different scenarios and situations and things that are provoked in your memory. But George Floyd isn't the only person. He won't be the last person, right? I mean, Derek Chauvin is a name associated with that, but even within that course of him being tried and him being found guilty, there were so many other people who had lost their lives at the hands of police violence, right? The outcome or the result, regardless of the specifics, the results are the same, right? Because it's one thing when you can say, well, only in these scenarios where it's justified, but no, now it's hard to even look at what's justified if we're seeing so much that goes unjustified, and it's happened time and time again. And yet, Juneteenth, right? Juneteenth, we can celebrate now because maybe it provides you a 3-day weekend, maybe it provides you a sale, because we all know that even though as minorities as we are in the grand scheme of data and numbers, we definitely create the most in terms of our ability to make product, right? Think about how black culture exists in this broader context. When you look at something like Beats by Dre, right? It's a electronic company that produces audio headphones. But there was a period of time when you couldn't look anywhere and not see somebody on a plane, a bus, or maybe even in a car where they had on these headphones that had this clear B on the side of their head, right? But what was the Beats by Dre representing? Oh, Dr. Dre, a music producer from Compton, California, from LA, right? Who's known for, his involvement in NWA, right? There's such classic hits as F the Police and, you know,
Straight out of Compton.
straight out of Compton with attitude, you know what I'm saying? There's Easy E, Ice Cube. You take all of these. Oh wait, and then he created The Chronic, which is a classic masterpiece, and found Snoop Dogg. And oh wait, then he finds this really incredible lyrical rapper from Detroit named Eminem. Oh wait, and then he helps give life to the career, right? The career helps support Kendrick
Curtis
Lamar. So
Jackson.
this
And
this
Curtis
this
Jackson.
Kurt oh and Curtis Jackson too, right? The names, the
The
impact,
star of
the
power.
cultural influence, the number of records sold, how many of them artists have gone on to win Pulitzer Prizes, Grammys, Oscars. This is Dr. Dre's fingerprints on a company that generates billions of dollars and was one of the biggest providers of economic sustenance in the field of audio equipment. And then it gets bought out by Apple, which is one of the biggest companies in the world. And Dr. Dre being a black person is a part of this larger American narrative of black genius, right? But I mean, I remember I had friends who wouldn't even let me in their house, but they wore Jordans. They wore Jordans, and what's Jordans? Michael Jordan, another black man who's an athlete who, because of his prowess and his abilities and what he provided to the game of basketball in the NBA, created a brand within Nike that generated billions of dollars. Man, there's these consistent themes of what it means to be black in America and be a minority, yet being able to produce this this iconography of a man getting ready to slam dunk, right? Everyone knows the silhouette just as much as they know the silhouette of the NBA logo, right? It's almost synonymous, right? I wouldn't be surprised at some point that becomes the logo of the NBA because, yeah, it has that much pull, it has that much power. And yet, Juneteenth, right? Juneteenth, right? We talk about black excellence and the status we hold and what we can do and what we're capable of and how much influence we have. Hip hop is one of the most long lasting of the genres of music created out of the American popular music that dictates the world, right? When we talk about every form of music, there's someone black involved in the conversation or in the creation, right? I mean, the Rolling Stones is named after a black man's song, right? The Rolling Stones will even go and tell you and praise, right? Howling Wolf, Muddy Waters, and all these individuals who will go on down in infamy that, unless you read a book or someone introduces it to you, will not be a part of the common discourse of popular culture. That's the truth. Just like Juneteenth, which is the day that we supposedly were set free, except if we're found guilty for committing a crime, right? We're free except if we're found guilty for committing a crime, right? And yet, when we look at those statistics, we look at that data, who is the largest population when it comes to the people that are incarcerated? Or, in this case, enslaved? Well, they're still black people. So, hmm, Juneteenth, which was decided after they figured out, well, we can keep people in slavery, right? Because if we have redlining, right, which then determines the value of your property, and that means you are at an economic disadvantage when it comes to your white brothers and sisters, right? When it comes to looking at the property value of where you currently sit at and your access to economic mobility. And oh wait, 100 years ago, we had something called Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that just got obliterated, burned down to the ground, right? And now the United States government chooses to acknowledge it as the last remaining people to have experienced that atrocity or on their way out the door, right? 100 years later. Yeah, what are the actions of repair to that, right? What has actually been designated for black people beyond the designation of a holiday to address the harm that has been caused time and time again? I mean, Juneteenth was a day, right? June 19th, 1866 was a celebration of the emancipation. But even going into the 50s and the 60s, there were black people who were indentured servants who weren't even aware of what Juneteenth was, right? They didn't even have an idea. They were still working in the field, right? We didn't have the access of phones and the ability to communicate the way we do now, right?
Right.
They marched into Texas to let them know, y'all free. But they didn't march left, right, north, south, east, west, up and down all over the grid of Texas. They just came in and was like, look, spread the word. Well, if we don't spread the word to every Negro, they ain't got to know that they can go. And that's the truth, right? When we talk about Juneteenth, I mean, if you appreciate it, by all means, appreciate and enjoy, celebrate. But for me, a person who I've spent so much of my life trying to fight injustice by working in the community and being of support to those that don't have access to, right? When I try to be there for my family as they're being impacted by all of these different systems that historically have been so damaging to my family, let alone my community and my family being black, right? I'm just like, oh, you want to give me a holiday? You gonna give me a holiday? Does that mean I'm gonna get an email from Target and Best Buy and any of these
And
Macy's?
is the banks go call me and say they got an account for me with $100 in it? That's that's
Oh,
what they
you
should.
asking for too much. I just said I wanted an email to let me know, hey, we got savings this weekend only. Juneteenth celebratory celebration sales.
You know, that's great. But like when you talk about when you the reluctance of peace, right? The reluctance to peace that that exists, right? Can go back. You can go back 2 years before, right? With the Emancipation Proclamation, right? 1863, Abraham Lincoln's like, slavery's wrong. And folks is like, all right, Abe, that's cool. Like, we get it, but as long as you stay up there, whatever your union want to do, let your union do. Then, then 1865, right, end of January, Congress says, all right, we're going to pass this. But they not go proclaim it, right? They ain't gonna let people know about it. Because again, right? No C-SPAN, right? It's no internet, right? And most people, most of the Black African American population, right, cannot read, right? Because the majority of them is slaves. So the majority of them are slaves. So they wait a whole year to ratify it in December, right? Then they proclaim it later on, right? December 6th, they ratify it. The 18th, they proclaim it. So then, right, 1865, take them a whole year first, right? After taking 2 years to to get it to Congress, right? Then they take a whole year. And when you look at the amount of people that were dying per year as slaves, um, the amount of people that were still being brought to America as slaves, right? Being kidnapped, right? Not stolen as property, right? They're being kidnapped, right? They're being abducted, right? Tortured, right? Starved, beaten, and and uh and then forced, right, into labor as slaves for basically 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Numbers on numbers on numbers, right? They wasn't really like slowing down so much, um, right? Because business was booming and slavery was business. Um, and you talk about those indentured servants, right? Who were working for little to nothing, and they really thought, as far as work goes, that the best they could do was the agriculture, industry, and in the Jim Crow Confederate South. And they didn't know that, right? They could go right a few states away and do better, right? And it would not be easy, right? Because better was not about it being easy for African Americans, right? It's not. It's like it's still not about that, really, right? It's not about ease of the journey, as much as it is like you may not have to play as much defense while you trying to be on the offense and score for you and your family. Um, and right, it's being a part of the capitalistic game that exists in America. When you say, well, folks didn't really know, like if you was working in the Confederate South, like you didn't know, well, then you just go keep working, and then June 19th, right, 2,000 people come down to Galveston, Texas. Well, if you don't work in Galveston, Texas, in Galveston, right? As I say, Galveston. If you don't work in Galveston, like then you like then you would know right away, right? It would take a quarter million slaves to be told by 2,000 troops. And then those quarter million slaves then had to get out of Galveston, right? They had to get out of the city, right? Then get out of the county, then get out of the region, and then get out of the state just to believe it, and experience it without violence. And then, like, we're not really experiencing it now, like you said, right? We're not really experiencing it now without violence. And then you have situations, um, societal indicators that not much has changed, and you have circumstances that exist that would allow harm and allow really incarceration to be like a viable future for you know a significant percentage of people, right? When you say, right, over 100,000 people, you got 2,300, 100,000 incarcerated people, right? You got 2,300, right, who are black, um, and then you got Native American and Latinx folk um, behind that, but by almost like 800 to 1,000 people. Um, it's like, okay, so if we got this 13th Amendment, it really just means like if you don't stay in line, you can go. We can just go back to where we started in 1860, 65, right? Like we just go back to back then, right? Because right, the 13th Amendment passed in January of 1865, right? So it's like we could just go back to 1864, 1863, just even before the Emancipation Proclamation, where folks didn't know, and it was cool for you to just be enslaved right here. We just like practice wearing these chains around your neck, practice wearing these chains around your wrists, practice wearing these chains around your ankles for a bit, and when you slip up, we'll get you some new ones, and you can hold on to those, and come do some license plates, can come do some field work,
Some road
and you
work.
come some road work, make some clothes, like you come through, and we hook you up, uh but like just know we always got a spot for you. um what they call it in sorry to bother you, duty free. Oh no, what they call it now, what they call it, I forget what they call it. It's not duty free. But basically, people going to jail getting 3 meals a day, and they see it as appealing, um, as the their best option to put themselves at risk, right? To jeopardize their physical freedom, their mental freedom, right, and their spiritual freedom, uh, by being enslaved in a penitentiary. And it's interesting. Like, I think it's smart, right? It's clever to call it rehabilitation, right? It's clever, um,
It
because
sound
maybe it's
nice.
right. Well, it it sounds nice to yeah, nice ring to the people who's not being enslaved.
I mean, but what if I mess up my shoulder and I go to rehabilitation? I go to rehab. I go to physical therapy. Oh, I go to physical therapy. It's therapeutic. Ah, man, it's physical therapy.
Wait,
So
but
much for
what
my
about
rehab.
what about rehab for poverty?
What are you talking about? Why are you even saying something like that? You crazy?
Why if we talk about what's wrong with me, right? If I say, well, there's a problem with my life, right? A problem with the way I'm living, right?
It's a problem for who?
for
For
me,
you? But what
right?
if
So
I don't see
I need
you? What if I
for
don't
my
see
ankle,
you?
put
I
my
don't see
but my
you though.
but if I, my ankle messed up, even if you
Well, it
can't see
depends. Do
me,
you
I
got
still
healthcare
can't
coverage?
walk.
Do you got
I still.
healthcare coverage?
But what about my coverage? How can I have healthcare coverage?
You don't exist then. You
It
ain't got
wait,
healthcare.
it's
You ain't no.
but I'm impoverished. I how am I get healthcare?
You're not gonna get healthcare. We gonna hope you make it, and we gonna maybe you get a free meal if you could stumble all over to the soup kitchen. If you just
But
if you can
what
limp,
do I do? What do I do with the free meal?
you eat that.
But what do I do after that? How do I get another one?
You hope you get another one. Hope you can get another one,
So maybe I should just go to rehabilitation and then I get 3 meals a day.
and you get housing, and they gonna take care of you because they got doctors.
And then they got clothes.
You just can't go nowhere. And you got to wake up when we tell you when to wake up. Matter of fact, you got to follow every single rule we tell you to follow. You just can't leave.
But how come y'all just can't give me instructions to do that outside?
It's harder for us to make money off of it.
But but how do I make money?
I mean, if we was concerned with that, you probably wouldn't be in this situation to begin with.
Okay. So I gotta figure that part out myself. But
You got to figure out how
if
to help
it
yourself. If you got a broke ankle, you better figure out which bootstrap you finna pull up.
but if I go to rehab, right? You could do that for me, right? You could just tell me
If you
use.
come to the rehabilitation where you give up your freedom, yeah, and you commit some act of harm in the community, yeah, of course. The
But what if
price
it's
of admission is
what if it's
to
not
traumatize.
harm though? What if I'm just like selling cigarettes because I'm trying to make money, right?
Then we might have to execute you on the street because then that's not. I mean, how harmful is it if
But it's
cigarettes are
capitalism.
legal? What kind of capitalism are we talking about? Is
But
this
if the
capitalism?
store could sell cigarettes and then I buy them, right? If I buy the cigarettes the same way the store buy the cigarettes to sell them, right? Then I buy cigarettes and I sell them, right? Isn't that cool?
Do you got a permit?
Wait? I didn't see the store's permit
I mean, of course you didn't see it. We didn't want you to see it. If we cared enough to have you actually know the infrastructure and the way that it works, we would include you in and inform you of the process.
so. But what if I buy drinks and then I sell drinks?
I
Can I
mean, it
make
depends. Do you look like a threat? If you look
to
like a threat,
not
right?
to my mama?
Well, it depends on who looking, right? To
All
your
right,
mama, okay.
all
But
right.
if
So
it's somebody else in a uniform or somebody else who has the ability to exercise veiled authority, right? Veiled authority. I'm not going to call it outright authority. It's veiled authority, right? Because again, most people don't know their rights, so it's veil, right? You get to remove the veil if you know your rights, but they don't want
okay.
you to know your rights, so the veil
But
is there.
what if I sell weed, right? So the dispensaries, right? They buy weed and then they sell weed, and I see people lined up like crazy. Can I do that?
I mean, if you don't get caught, you know
Wait,
what I'm saying?
why they doing it in broad daylight? They doing it all day.
Because
Why?
again, right? We have created a system for them to be able to sell it in broad daylight, and we're going to make it extremely difficult for you to be able to participate in that system
Because I
because
look
of
like a
all of
threat.
the bureaucracy, right? You look like a
Because
threat. Of course, you look like a threat.
but even if I break, so first I gotta not look like a threat. Then I gotta get a permit for cigarettes. I gotta get a permit for alcohol, and I gotta get a permit for marijuana to sell it. But I can buy all of it myself anytime I want to.
Yeah, of course. Of course you can.
But that's gonna make it really
As a matter of fact, we're
often,
gonna make it easier for you to access those three things, and we're gonna be able to make it easy for you to access healthcare.
and it seemed like it's easier to get those things than it is to get food.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at least
Uh,
food that actually has real sustenance in it.
I mean, because like I know if I go get marijuana, then I'll be really hungry. And then if I go if I go to get some alcohol, I only see like candy and like protein bars, and
You thought
chips.
those was protein bars. With them ain't protein bars. Them is sugar filled oatmeal chocolate chip snack bars.
What they say, right? That is protein,
Yeah,
right?
but
And but
protein
if
how
I
much? We talking about
and
three
then
grams?
when I go get cigarettes, um, it depends on where I go. But sometimes I can find sandwiches or like hot dogs that's like been in the thing all day.
All day.
Um, and I, it's hard for me to like afford the cigarettes because I'm kind of addicted to those. It's hard for me to get the cigarettes and get the sandwiches or the hot dogs. So how do I make money to do that? If those are things that I like, right? Like because if I like marijuana, if I like cigarettes and I like alcohol, right? Because those things I'm kind of like those are things I use to like cope with like my trauma, right? Because I grew up in poverty, like I grew up in poverty into poverty, right? So I started there and I'm still there. And so I I've like experienced a lot of stuff that was like harmful to me. And to 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 like manage that, like
Oh, you mean
I,
manage your trauma? Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
got you
right. That
traumatized.
yeah,
You
you're
had a
right.
lot of
That
adverse
so
child
so
experiences, is what you saying. Adverse childhood experiences.
not just my childhood though, right? Because I it's
We
like
call them ACEs. It's in the book.
I started there, right? And I started there with the trauma in my childhood, but then I had it in my adolescence, and then I had it in my adulthood too. And
So
so,
look,
like
this is what we gonna do.
the
This is what we gonna do.
cigarettes, right, the alcohol, and the
We got
marijuana
people who
help me.
we got people, right, who aren't from your community, who have theorized all of the different things you just communicated, and they have no clear understanding themselves of how to process or navigate it, and they look nothing like you. And we're gonna provide you in abundance those people within those systems that understand or have a what I would call a third person idea of what you're going through, not necessarily firsthand
But
experience.
if I tell them the facts, will they believe that over their theory?
Oh, you see, the thing is, right? They're facts for you and how you perceive it. And since they're facts and how you perceive it, that actually doesn't change
But
in the facts when you tell them. They
but I
just become
know,
theories. It
but I
becomes
know,
theoretical.
right? Because the facts is right something that's known, right, and proven. Because right there it is happening right there. I'm watching that fight happen, right?
But if
I'm
I
watching
turn
that
my
person get
head
shot,
and I just
but
take it as your story,
but it's on
it's
the
your
body cam too. Oh, you don't see the body cam footage?
if I don't look at it, it don't exist.
Oh, okay, so fine, right? So we just go with your theory because your theory is gonna help me, right?
Um Theoretically speaking, the
Oh,
theory is made to give you moments of hope, but if you don't have enough supports, it ain't gonna help you. Like you have
right.
to
So
have you have to have
I
a
be hoping that
considerable
I
amount
feel
of
better.
skills.
I be hoping that I feel better,
You might feel
right?
better for Wednesday but not Thursday, Friday.
What's that like? I hope I feel better like after I get cigarettes, right? I hope I feel better after I get buy alcohol. I hope I feel better after I get marijuana. But then after that stuff is gone, I don't really feel better, and I like be hungry, and it's really hard for me to get work, especially like I feel like people like when I come when I go places smelling like any of those things because that's my clothes all smell the same. Um, if I show up in those places, they really don't want me to stay there. Um,
Yeah, you see that's the funny thing, right?
especially at school.
It's funny you say that. Cocaine don't really have much of a smell to it, but people sniff it a lot. And you would never know, right, that the pills that people pop and take because they don't exude or have a fume that comes off of it that would even notify you,
But
right, that
I
it's
only get stuff
there.
at the that's at the store though.
Oh, well, I'm just trying to help you manage, right? Because it sounds like you have substances that you use, right? Like if I was to hand you
because
pharmaceutical prescription, right? Right. That right, those
but
prescriptions,
I don't have health
which
care.
but you if you can get enough money, you can pay for it out of pocket. It's really expensive, right? I mean, the access is there if you have money. And I mean,
But
if
would
you
the
can't
effects of the like will my symptoms be gone if I just bought meals with that instead? Like would that help with what I was experiencing if I just bought food with that money
theoretically speaking,
instead of buying if I bought food that
the
had nutrition like nutritional
theoretically
value
speaking,
if
it
I
should
ate
work
that
out.
instead of if I ate like stuff that was good for me instead of like saving my money to get pharmaceutical drugs, could I just like eat better if I could just eat, if I save the money instead of buying cigarettes and alcohol and marijuana, if I instead of buying those three things that make me smell bad and people kick me out of places, if I bought food instead, would that like make some of my side effects and like help me like manage things better, help me navigate a little bit better? Uh,
I mean, it's funny you say if you were to eat something, right? Because there was a man who um once lived. He once did live, but he no longer lives.
okay,
And his name, he was known as Dr. Sebi, right? And he proclaimed that the body, right, needs electricity, right? And that acidity can corrupt and create inflammation within the body that can make it sick. Now, here's the thing, right?
okay.
And he was in 1987, right? He was charged with 2 counts of practicing medicine without a license, right? Because he claimed to have cured all of these diseases, right? And the thing is, when the truth was shown, he was able to help take care of these people, right? Through what some call being vegan, but also with just a real practical sense of what you put into your body will produce different results. Now, it sounds like you live in an environment in an area where you don't really have access to maybe good quality or great quality fruits and vegetables or things that can create some level of sustenance that could provide that level of health that you say, right, if I eat this with this, some of these things go away. And there have been seen, the effects of what you eat, right, especially in this country we live in where obesity is high, right? And there's a there's a lot of evidence or data that suggests if you were to eat healthy, a lot of the ailments that you suffer from, not to just mention what you eat, but if you had stable living conditions or a situation that led itself towards
Yeah, cause like
sustainability and safety.
this not where I live, right? I'll be living. Sometimes I'm on the west side, and sometimes I'm on the south side, right? Because that's like closer to the sun. So
Yeah.
I'll be right. I'll be
Yeah,
on
but
the
that's the
south
thing. If you
side.
had if you had a stable, sustainable living situation, chances are you wouldn't even have a need. Because there was a thing that happened in Washington where they had these things called the wet homes. And what happened is there were people who, had an addiction to alcohol, and once they were provided stable living conditions, the rate of consumption for alcohol actually reduced considerably, right? And that actually happened. That was, I mean, theoretically, excuse me, I didn't mean to say, it happened as in a fact. It happened in a theoretical sense because that's just what we surmised from witnessing these people live and what happened, right? Because again, right, race theory suggests, right, that could produce more division if people have a knowledge of self and where they come from, that could further divide the United States more than it's already divided now. I mean, even
But
more than the
but
70 versus 70 million who voted for two different presidents, who, as one is extreme in his uh, toxicity and the other one not as much, now they're still a part of the same
but
truth.
if you go back like 250 years, and everybody knew that they had come from Europe, and they had division, right, of the Union and the Confederacy, right? They had division also, right? So wouldn't like
Well, I mean, how
they
much
like
has
so
that really been resolved? Because it just
so
seems
it's
like
not
the
really
Union Confederacy.
self-awareness that's causing division, right?
You're right.
It's not really knowledge itself that's gonna cause more division to the United States, is it? Or in
No, not at
theory, in
all.
theory, in theory.
In theory, I mean, in theory, we have the freedom to relive the atrocity of the, American Civil War, just as a form of expression to maybe keep that division going. I mean, regardless of the information, the education, or the basis, right? We don't have a foundational federal understanding of what needs to be given to youth all over this country in terms of their education. Because again, as much as this is a free country, right? You have the freedom to express yourself. Theory and fact oftentimes look very different depending on who's the one using the words.
Okay, okay. So so basically, if there are enough people that disagree on a few things, right, then we could just keep the division going, right, for right as long as necessary, as long as people
Yeah,
want to make money from it, right?
yeah.
Then it's gonna stick around. Okay,
Yeah, because
so
we could use someone who looks like you, who we would define as Americanly successful, right? They're successful under the lens and scope of what we as Americans have agreed upon as successful. So that means maybe they have money, or they have status, or they have influence, right? Maybe they have stature in a
and so can we
class, right?
can we generalize? Can we generalize? Can you take their situation and generalize for everybody that everybody who
No, we only
looks like
want
me
a few
is?
to have it, so that way we can point to them to say, "Can't you see that you have the ability to do it too?" Even though a lot of their circumstances came down to how much resource access, or how they just were lucky enough to not get caught in a system that's made to enslave them.
Oh, okay. So if I'm
I
lucky,
mean, they were lucky. I mean, and the thing is, let's not
oh,
confuse it, because some of their friends weren't lucky. Some of their friends had
okay,
to
okay.
take the rap, as they say. They had to do the time for the crime, but because they had a solidarity, unlike most of their peers, they were able to keep the money going, right? Because they understood the sacrifices that were being made was, my friend is going to have to do some time, and when he's done doing that time, I will take care of him, because they were in solidarity with me to protect me, to keep me in the capitalistic game, to keep me going so I can reach back, right? If I have the awareness enough to know what the risks
Oh, you
are.
mean like Memphis Bleak?
Memphis, or
In
there's
theory.
some, in theory, yeah, in theory, Memphis Bleak. You're right.
Okay, 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 cool. All right, so I could, all right. So I just need so, some unlucky people around me so that I could be lucky,
And
right?
let the
So,
and hopefully they have the tolerance to understand their unluckiness, right? Because in order to be lucky lefty, right, there has to be some people who they don't pick the lucky straw, right? And
okay, okay.
hopefully you have enough within you to say, you know what, I'm gonna take care of your family as I excel, and I'm gonna make sure you don't go hungry, where you can eat a little bit extra when you're down in the slavery camp.
I don't know if I got enough apathy for that though.
I mean, hopefully you could find enough apathy to keep pushing and trugging forward when, yeah, like, hey, you know what? You're doing me a solid, and as much as it pains me to see you down, I'm gonna keep on rising. And when you come out, guess what? I'm gonna have a position waiting for you. I will make sure that your legacy is solidified, where you can escape the same pitfalls that your peers, that when you were down and you were sitting with them, when y'all were forced to sit down, they not gonna have the same access you gonna have, but you gonna have some exemplary access, right? Because again, we're gonna use you and your friends as the token individuals to point to say, look, they did it against all odds. They were incarcerated, they changed their life, right?
Okay,
They were
so
able to leverage their family status, or maybe some sense of acclaim or fame that they had any access to grant them a new brand or company or success. Maybe you have just enough of that initiative driven energy that you just believe so blindly in yourself to tune out all of the noise that is coming your way, where guess what, now you can be profoundly successful too.
all right, so Juneteenth is a good thing.
Yeah, celebrate it.
Okay.
Hopefully within 3 to 4 years, you'll also start to see the sales come in where 50 to 60% off for all black people who decide to step foot into a store owned
Right.
by white
Okay.
folks.
All right. Okay. Cool. Because I think in reality, right? Like the 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 federal holiday is gonna bring in sales,
Yeah,
and
it's going to help the
the
economy.
federal, right? And yeah, exactly. So
It might not help the black community, which may need varying degrees of help
now,
in the.
but right, we don't really, right? We're not really worried about that,
I mean, yeah, because when you look at the
right?
track record, theoretically speaking, the United
Just
States hasn't really shown a sense of empathy, care, or consideration to the
right,
advancement of black people in adverse situations.
right. We just leave
Push it to the side.
that idea
Push it to the side. Just leave it on the
down
side.
down there. All right. So Juneteenth is a federal holiday, and while it's a federal holiday, right, we are watching the United States complicity, complicitness with an Israel regime that is all for genocide. Um,
Well, not remember, it's not everyone, right? That you can't take a vocal majority or minority or a vocal populace that exists within a country and then proclaim that as much as they're screaming it in the streets that they want death to those that believe in a specific religion or come from a certain nationality or culture, you can't take that and say as a blanket statement that this whole government, this particular government that is being supported by the United States monetarily for an event that took place in a European country, yeah, you
but
can't necessarily say.
I'm looking for the the folks with the platform and the voices and the large amounts of people to come out against the genocide that doesn't represent them, and it seems challenging to find, and maybe that is a media thing, um, but I also don't see an American government doing much to stop it outside funding the genocide itself, like funding the
I mean, could
killing.
you say it's almost as considerably crazy to say, okay, yes, we're going to give you a holiday. You black people get a holiday. All you lovely black folks, we're going to get a holiday, right? The United States government, us as the United States government, we will designate this national holiday, right? Not to say we're going to designate also any level of responsibility or accountability for our actions for the past 400 years in the discouragement of black people and their advancement in life, but we're also going to give money to a country, right, to help them create an army and create a massive military presence as a strategic stronghold within a region that we see economic viability to try to have some level of control in at the hands of destroying the people who were inhabitants there prior, right? I mean, that's almost
um,
as crazy as to say
that is
there
kind
was
of
a
crazy.
country or there is a country that we also collaborated with to some degree on an economic scale to investigate the possibility of a you know virus or some type of sickness that could jump from animal to animal. And then it actually does jump from animal to animal. And the person who's going to lead you into what we should do is also somehow involved in that same level of investment and research to understand something that may have the potential of harming the globe. I mean, it's almost as crazy to say that we're against that same country that we help develop these things and fund them to understand and research, and they also have camps like we do in the United States, where in their case, they're, putting people in these camps based off of their religious beliefs. And we put people in camps based off of the fact that they're trying to escape very much violent, horrible, kind of impoverished circumstances in a neighboring country, right? We oftentimes, right, will look and say, oh, point the finger of this is what they're doing wrong, and then we'll create this kind of wall or this line, right, where our own vice president will say, do not come to this country because we don't have anything for you, even though we have a lot of land.
and
We
a
have
lot
we have a lot of
resources.
land. We have a lot of empty homes and places to stay, and we're in need of a workforce. And we just don't have it. We don't have anything for you, right? Isn't that? I
That's
mean,
kind of
that all like
you're right. You're right. You're right. I don't know what I was thinking. That's when you put it like that, right? It sounds crazy that we would do anything that wouldn't benefit the financial goals and the military goals of our government. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah. So that makes sense. It's not necessarily about benefiting, as many people as possible. It's not necessarily about being an example of acceptance and refuge and justice, you know, and or liberty. Because right, it's like we can just enslave people if they mess up, right? Because the
yeah.
13th Amendment said, right, it's like even our own people, right, domestic, right, like native or not native, but
I mean, what do
naturalized
you think there's?
citizens,
Do you
citizens.
you think
We can
those?
just imprison them, right? That's cool. So yeah, I
You
get
said
that.
natives. How dare
Yeah,
you
we
say native, indigenous people to this land that we fought and killed and
yeah,
stole
no,
from
no, no,
people?
no, no, no. We put them we enslaving them too. We
Oh,
just
okay.
we enslaving them too. We want them
I mean,
to
because I
help
mean,
us
maybe there is
as a
some
government. There's a government
semblance.
that want right. We want them. The government wants
I mean, you
them
think about it
indigenous
like
folks to
this, right?
also
You
be
think about
a
the
part of
indigenous
the
people,
workforce.
right? Think about the indigenous people who live here, and we knew that they didn't claim ownership to the land because their relationship to the land was being it was cohabitual, right? They were cohabitants to the land. They respected the land as being cohabitants to it, right? And we drove them to the point of, in a lot of ways, genocide in a variety of forms, right? Whether that was direct, us killing them and pursuing them, or giving them, articles of cloth that also had some level of sickness to carry them on their way, and then enclose them in these regions, right, where maybe they
Yeah,
don't have access to the same resources as their neighbors, right? Who, we call them reservations, but what's really being reserved is just land and nothing else, right? We observe your existence as you living in your own space after we've done so much historical harm to you and your people. But I mean, that's almost similar in comparison to what's going on in the conflict of Israel and Palestine, right? People who have lived there, and now there's a claim to land based off of many varying degrees of stipulation and
that's
information and
that.
history,
No, no, no.
and
That's
we're
apples.
driving these
That's
people into smaller than smaller groups to the point of,
that's apples and religious oranges,
well, I
right?
mean, think
Because that's
about it. If you
about
think
that's
about
because right because
the
the
indigenous
perception.
people, right, indigenous people here, right, you would have to ask, what real claim to economic status do they have to operate in sovereignty and independence, right? It's very difficult to not have some inter intersectionalness or integration within the capitalistic economic system that is here in America without some level of, like, yeah, we need to be a part of what the United States status, laws, stipulations, right? Their permittance of our involvement, right? And now you look at what's happening to the Palestinian people and their lack of independence and the ability to have any economic holding. It all has to go through this other this other entity. It's all being controlled, manipulated, and done through this other entity, right? And what are some commonalities? Well, who has really incredible? military power, who has a militarized stance that is so large and massive that is hard to ignore, right? Because when you look
But
at the
but Senor,
the outpour, right? It was guns, gunpowder, and having this mass of people who are willing to kill, right, to drive people into these reservations. And now we're looking just across the Atlantic Ocean in this region where they have jets and they have a military and they have a dome who are, engaged in battle with people who have nothing of the sort of the same comparable scope of military prowess and yet are struggling to survive. Right?
oh, that is the same. But
Hmm.
that is the same. So,
I mean, 100 years ago, they dropped bombs on Tulsa, Oklahoma, and here we are in the present day, and an America-funded jet, to some degree, is dropping bombs on the Palestinian people.
oh yeah, now they got mortars and all types of
I mean,
weapons and
Fred Hampton
ordinances.
was in Philadelphia, and that wasn't 100 years ago, and he was trying to fight for the liberation of his people, and it wasn't just his people; it was many people, right? And it's been turned into a movie, and you know, we know how that story ends.
Right. But like when the Constitution was talking about establishing justice, they were very specific about who was considered in that, right? And
Oh
then
yeah,
when they wanted to ensure domestic tranquility. Like I don't feel like it's I have insurance on that, on tranquility, living in the domestic United States. Um, and then like for like it's for they wanted to establish the common defense. I don't feel like I'm defended all the time under the Constitution, and they they wanted to promote general welfare. Um, but I see I can see a lot of people who are not included in that general welfare. Um, and then secure the blessings. They wanted to secure the blessings of liberty, and I don't see a lot of liberation happening as we move into the Juneteenth weekend. I know what Juneteenth represents out of Galveston, Texas, and what African Americans, people of Black uh, in America, people of African descent have been celebrating in terms of the pursuit of liberty. Um, but I don't feel like the blessings of liberty were meant for Black people in the Constitution. When say ourselves and our posterity, um, as they established the Constitution, I don't think they was talking about indigenous people. I don't think they was talking about people
you
of
don't think
color.
they
I don't.
wasn't?
Oh, okay, that's it.
They wasn't
Right.
at all. They wasn't. It wasn't. We
Thanks for
as a
clearing that up.
country,
That's
what we
clear.
wasn't considering,
That's
right?
clear because I feel like because I think right people who are Black were not considered human at the time.
Well, in the 1700s, right? The South, they wanted to have some, so they wanted to have some stake, right, when it came to being represented. So how could they be represented if much of the population in the South had slaves? Well, the way that they said was, oh, well, we'll have them count towards 3/5 of a whole being, right? So, given you have so many slaves, now you can have representation within the House of Representatives, within the Senate, within Congress, within the United States, government system, right?
Oh,
Because now we're going to recognize your property as a way to increase your populist status. But the thing is,
got it.
right, as soon as Juneteenth came around a couple years later, what did they do? The South, those Confederate states, enacted laws that led to the disenfranchisement of Black people, right? That's also led to what we call Jim Crow laws, right? Because as much as they were free, there were still laws and legislation that kept them segregated, that kept them limited in terms of their access to the same good quality anything. We talking about healthcare, education. We talking about food. You name it, right? We're not gonna give you the same level of access as what we have as white individuals in this country. And the thing is, me being a black individual, having an understanding, education, awareness of this. I mean, it didn't happen within the school system or structure. It happened much largely outside of it,
Right.
right? So me having this understanding hasn't created any hostility or anger or hatred towards any of my white counterparts that occupy any of the workspaces that I'm currently in. It has led to more education for them and their unawareness and ignorance because I have access to this information. But again, I was in a privileged position due to luck in where I was born and who I was born to have that access of information so I could distribute it to my fellow compatriots.
And you know what? I don't hear a lot of hate, right, coming from folks that I know of Palestinian descent. I don't I don't see a lot of hate towards people. I see a lot of pain and a lot of sorrow, and I see a lot of remorse and grief. But the anger is not directed at individual Israeli folks. I see it directed at governments and peoples in power who are complicit and allowing and condoning um, this treatment, this genocide, this murdering, right? But like the trauma is not breeding resentment toward individuals. It's not causing people to hate each other. It's the
I
hate of
mean,
each other
has there
that's
been
causing the
has has there been a national black army that has tried to fight any form of American resistance for change in the United States ever? Has it ever come about or happened? I mean, they've been scared when certain leaders of communities would come together and, try to give them, give the people, right? Oh, Martin Luther King, for example, right? He actually promoted peace, right? He was a study of, passive resistance, right? And forms of peace and non-harmfulness, and even he was assassinated and killed when he was attempting to bring the country together under the understanding of classism and poverty, right? Because again, it was strategic to say, if I make it a black issue, it's only black people, but if I make it about poverty, well, then I can get us a win for all people, right? It was strategic. And I
but
don't recall
that that's why
any
they killed
massive
him.
arms coming together in a very strategic way to try and overthrow the government, like what these wild fools did on January 6th when they decided to parade around a Nazi flag, you
Confederate
know,
flag
a Confederate flag. Two those are two losing armies, right? That represent death and destruction. That's what armies do, right? I've never heard an army say, "What we're doing is a campaign of peace, and we're using a jet to drop off just food and water." Right? I mean, I've just most campaigns, if there's food, water, or any type of infrastructure relief, that
it's
is
really
after
it's
the
really
fact.
it really takes a really long time for it to happen. That's
Exactly.
that's
Right.
what
And yet, right, this education awareness and this knowledge of what has happened, what fundamentally has taken place, I have yet to see it resolve itself in a state of any type of violence or with violent rhetoric, right? Until it's, a very, very small minority of people who have been pushed to the fringes of society where they feel like that's their only form of expression is violence. But I haven't seen that happen to the scale of which the formation of the United States may have had ushered into. I
oh
mean, we had a
yeah.
revolutionary war, we had a civil war, we've engaged in two world wars, we've been engaged in many different conflicts all over the world. And yet, Black people's understanding and awareness of the pain and the harm that has been caused over the centuries within this country has not led to the formation of any type of militaristic construct under a Black or African American banner to try and overthrow this government. Yet, those same people who, again, Confederate, Nazi, Trump flags, right? Three losing flags, two of which are losing armies, went to the state capitol with the hopes of inciting some sense of violence. With they did commit acts of violence and acts of harm
Hmm.
and acts of destruction,
And
right?
murder.
And yeah, someone got murdered, right? When you take this into account, what is the issue with being able to support these individuals, these black people, these African American people, my community, with having, I don't know, an investment as a way of addressing the harm that is taking place, right? I mean, it's comparable to say, how do you, in a country where people live and exist, instead of trying to exterminate them, give them the means and infrastructure to find sustainability and independence to to thrive. But instead, often the conversation leads to deadly outcomes, right? To violent outcomes, to outcomes that mean the loss of life, as a way to show what is authority and power really look like, right? When it comes to control, when it comes to who decides who gets to thrive.
Yeah, I think what they figured out, or what they've influenced, is that the younger black population, right, is doing a better job of spending their money than the older black population. Um, and so, if they keep black people from getting old, they keep them at a optimum age to spend all their money. And if they never get old, then they never they never get to a point where they stop spending their money until right that money goes somewhere else. And often, right, because they don't have life insurance or they don't have um, paperwork for their wills, um, they never put themselves in a position, or their families in a position to um, have generational wealth. Um, so yeah, I get it. I mean, I get why the racism, I get why the systemic oppression is profitable. Um, I just know that celebrating Juneteenth is not gonna be the solution. Um, but it can bring awareness to the problems that still exist, and we can make shifts and pivots and have conversations. Um, Especially I think in the corporate world, not just in the communities, but in their vie for showing their representation um, and their, I guess, their lack of progressiveness, or when they want to show off their progressiveness, I guess they may begin to have conversations that would lead us towards an overall you know national understanding that more needs to change. That the abolishment of the police system and the way it exists now is necessary, um, and that the retooling of our government spending is needs to be geared towards equity and what people need, and it starts with the current youngest generations of people.
I mean, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I can see how the that and just a disclaimer for people who want to wild out and use this in the future to be like, oh, you see, he's saying racist. I spoke in the third person, and I was speaking from the perspective of my my own internalized kind of caricature, or this fictitious being that exists within American society. It's not any one individual. It's the combination, the amalgamation, the pretty much the synthesized derivative of all of these different events that have taken place over time that I've become aware of. to be this consciousness that I can call on because I'm always aware of it in every situation. I'm at all times fighting for the betterment, the equality, the upper mobility of all people, especially my black and brown people. And as we come to Juneteenth, and I am forced to reflect on my history with Juneteenth or lack thereof, because yeah, like I've said on this podcast many times before, I remember
Hmm.
I think I might have went to one Juneteenth celebration as a child, and I remember after that, my mom didn't never take me again because she was always concerned that there would be some type of shooting at a Juneteenth celebration in San Francisco, no matter how much or how bad I wanted to go. Right. And it reflects on, yes, my mother's black. She's from Texas. She has ties to the South. She moved to San Francisco when she was 6 years old. And, it was this whole thing where, yeah, they moved to the Bayview, right? That's where they lived. And after they left the Bayview, someone was able to purchase a home to live in another part of the city, right? And it's this thing where these narratives, these different themes come together that exist over the decades, over time, and here we are now getting ready to celebrate, which in some ways is an acknowledgement, but for me personally, I can't say it's an achievement. I can see it as an achievement for others. I can empathize with what this means and what this signals, because for so long the fight has been to be recognized, to be seen.
Right.
And this is one step of us being seen, and I can understand that. But as I learn more and I understand more, and I see how the game is played, where they'll use your own people against you a lot of times, right? Because again, that tokenized position, it plays well, right? Because you made it, because you have gained status, I can use you against your own people to say, nah, 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 nah. A few of you have been able to make it, right? It may not be in comparable scale to the white populace of the United States, right? Because if we were to scale it, right, like, yeah, you can look and see that poverty strikes all colors, all nationalities, race, creeds, whatever you call it, it's there. But when you start to look at upward mobility, success, when you start to look at wealth, those numbers are even more skewed, right? And that's what we're trying to say. If it was equal, everyone would have fair representation amongst the populations that exist, but it doesn't happen like that, right? We take one and we say, aha, right? The movie Blade did well. Well, Wesley Snipes saved Marvel movies. So guess what? You get your one black film till 20 some odd years later until you can get Black Panther. Oh, I see. So Wesley Snipes helped save Marvel cinema. And instead of using that as a marker of success for black film and cinema and heroes, we have to wait until many, many decades before we get another one. Talk about fair, talk about representation, talk about being seen, right? Of course, yes, I use one of the most shallow aspects because that's bait to reel you in for those that get it, and for those that don't, well, you can look at any number of black actresses and how they're represented in media and how much they're shown and seen, even though they are the most incredible of talent and what we have in this country. Yet, when you look at the breakdown and the data and the statistics, things don't always add up. And I'm just saying, when it comes to Juneteenth, there's all of that comes with it.
Right. So basically, what we can expect is Blade was released in 1998. Black Panther was released in 2018. So maybe 20 years from now, in 2021, I mean 2041, we'll start to see some
You almost made
needle
me throw
move.
everything I got in front of me.
some
I'm gonna
a
pick up
needle
and
move.
take everything.
Yeah, if you just listening, uh, Senio's ready to throw his desk, his light,
I mean, when you
his
say I
microphone.
gotta wait another 20 years for another black suit, like the thing is,
No,
this
not
is
for that. I'm talking about like for like an achievement in the vein of black what Blade means to Black Panther, right? This Juneteenth federal holiday will mean something to
oh man, if we
the
doing it in
the
that, then
the the people.
we gotta wait another 200 years then, right? We gotta wait
Okay,
like
okay.
for
Well,
1860 something to now
so I
2021. So
like
we got a
I
good
like
100 plus years before we get another one. I mean, I would throw my
So
desk for that one, but they've been beating me down this
1866.
whole time.
Yeah, beating this down. 1866 to 2021. So, it's funny because it really should have been a holiday then, right? Straight up, like off
Straight
the
then.
bat, like when Galveston was celebrating it, right?
Yeah, but
As a
we
thing,
had to get
right?
all
People
these
should have been
segregation laws
celebrating.
going. We had to get the segregation going first.
We
We had to get
had
this redlining going.
had to
We
do
had to
other
get y'all the
things.
GI Bill only to deny you any housing. Like, what are you talking about? Right? We had to take deindustrialization to come and ruin the black family. And then when the Black Panthers came along as a community partner to give us free access to food during the summer, what did we do? We gave them drugs and helped destroy many black communities all across America within the urban developments.
Oh,
Right? When we talk
there's a
about,
lot of massacres too. There was a lot of that still too, and not
I
just in
mean, there's
Tulsa,
of course there's a lot of that still to this day. To this
but there,
day.
but there's a lot of chocolate cities that was destroyed. Um, for those who don't know, right, Chocolate City is a predominantly black city that happens to be very enterprising in its uh, business and entertainment and infrastructure. Uh,
Well, as Affluent was stating, right? Um, Given the technical difficulties of us speaking many truths, I'm not surprised that happenstance and technological wonders would kind of dictate what we can share with you. So for those of you that are only hearing the audio only version of this, Affluent was getting ready to talk about chocolate cities and the enterprising economic kind of stature they held and how in varying degrees they were disenfranchised, taken apart, destroyed, brought down. It's a thing where, yeah, like I
they
was just
didn't want me to talk about the chocolate cities.
they didn't. They were trying to get you to stop. And the thing is that I was carrying it on by saying, yeah, like the disenfranchisement, the destruction, the degradation of those chocolate cities because of the fear of a black dollar and the independence, right? That supreme independence. For some strange reason, there's a fear of any black identity that exists in isolation away from the larger American integration and narrative, right? If there are other cultures and communities that operate in their own isolation and circulate money within their own communities based off of, I don't know, ethnic, racial, even country affiliations, I don't know how much they're impacted or harmed. And the most ironic thing is being black, or in this case African American, the underlying thing is we're still American, right? There isn't that national identity where we can say, "Oh, I'm Senegalese," or "I'm Ethiopian," or I'm South African. No, I'm from America. My identity is totally enraptured in what has taken place within the American scope of my skin color, right? So my dollars will still exist within this ecosystem, and who knows, maybe I'm able to innovate, cultivate something that would add more to the American just scope of, you know, consumerism, service, or, our stature in the world. But if I'm never really given that opportunity or given that point, well, I guess we'll never know. And that's the thing that I think about in a lot of different ways when it comes to, yeah, the names I mentioned before, right? We can say any entertainer's name and think about how much they mean in the larger scope of economics, capitalism, entrepreneurship, money, right? When it comes to having independence and freedom, right? We can listen to any number of songs of what it means to have any influence or affluence and wealth, right? And here we are, we're left to tokenize these people and idolize them instead of uh, a redistribution, right? Many people will have many legacies that will extend for hundreds of years. And yet, my fear is that when it comes to my Black family members and myself, I may not be afforded the same. And that is a very disturbing realization I have to live through every day, where maybe, as Affluence said earlier, I may have to engage in some form of apathy to have upward mobility to then set other people in disadvantaged situations, right? I mean, I've long had a theory around what it means to make it as a rapper, because I know a lot of talented rappers. But when it comes to the most successful, there's always this commonality of what leverages them into success. And it's not the talent. And to some degree, it's not even the work ethic. The work ethic does play a role. I will not discount it that much. But I will say there's another thing that I won't say, but for those that can read between the lines or take the time to investigate, you can always tie the strings back to something else. And yes, there's apathy that is involved in those other strings, right?
Hmm.
And for me, and being a rapper, as I've been joking around with and saying, yeah, maybe I've been rapping to the wrong communities. Maybe I've been rapping to the wrong people, right? Because I'm trying to hold on and maintain a boundary between what those elements are and also what I represent, right? Because you'd be surprised how many artists have their foundations laid on the backs, the bones, and the blood of others. And so, Affluent, do you have any final words as we get ready to commence our celebration of Juneteenth in the year 2021?
Well, I like to think of it as, hopefully this is just the intro, right? And we get to a point where we celebrating and we know why we're celebrating, um and everyone knows why we're celebrating, and the celebration is laced with progression and action. And I would like for folks to just understand the history, and let's all celebrate together, without appropriating culture, and make it a make it a time of moving forward, and us acknowledging that the issues that we still need to resolve, you know, that existed in 1865, um, in 1866, are still prevalent in America today and need to be addressed. And when those things, are at the forefront of our dialogue, then we can have an authentic, uh, pure, inclusive celebration of Juneteenth when we get free.
When we get free. Well,
Yeah.
Affluent, I
What
appreciate you and thank you. What was you getting ready to say?
what you got to say? What you want to let them know? What you want to tell them before we go?
There's so much that I want to say. There's so
All
much that
right.
I
Just
could say. And
just a little
and
bit.
and and it the thing is that to some degree it could drive me to tears. Now I'm in a very heated, hot temperature wise environment, so maybe I won't have that many access to that many tears, but I
Oh,
will say
okay. So
this.
what do you want them to think about until next time?
What I want them to think about is that, if anybody shamed you, belittled you, dismissed you, try to minimize the scope of anything you're going through, I just want to let you know that I feel you, that I see you, and that I'm here for you, that I love you, that I appreciate you, and that whatever your struggle is, it doesn't go unseen. It's not unheard. It's not that it's not acknowledged. Is that I'm here with you in it. That I'm working through this platform, through this vessel, and many other avenues, platforms, stages, arenas. I'm working for the advancement of all of us. If it doesn't look like it, challenge me on it. If it doesn't seem like it, let me know so I can better myself and be more aware of my actions and steps that I'm taking. Because as I've said so many times, I do have the capacity, right? I'm not looking to martyr myself. I'm not looking to die for this, because many people will lead you to believe that is the end game. No, I'm looking for us to live, and I'm looking for us to thrive, and I'm looking for that for everyone. I will not set us in a direction to have been lost or to lose. I'm looking to gain and I'm looking to grow, right? They say sacrifices may be had. No, the sacrifices have already happened. So, with this and what we're doing, I'm just saying, I'm here for you. And keep that in mind. If you can be there for somebody else, do it. If you can't, Just let them know you can't. May be hard.
Straight up.
It may hurt, but let them know because it's so vital. It's so important, and it's so worth it to just communicate. So yeah, that's what I got to say.
Thank you, brother.
You know, it's the least I could do. So as we like to do at this time, I just got to say on an anecdotal note, as the passing of Kanye West's birthday, man, he is something else, and that's just where I'm gonna leave it. He is something else.
But it was Tupac's birthday, and it was today's Kendrick's birthday.
Shout out to all the Geminis that be just killing it when it comes to the music game. Andre 3000, Kendrick Lamar, Biggie, Pac, Kanye, Prince. Shout out to the massive forms of just incredible black men from the Gemini era. Right, some about being set off in this heat this summer, just as the beat plays with all the influences.